Good morning and welcome to the Intermodalist, brought to you by the Combined Transport for Europe campaign, a podcast that unpacks the world of freight transport one container at a time. Today we will talk about the recently published Commission study on modal shift opportunities in Europe. To discuss this, we are joined by Maria Koidu, who is in charge of the Combined Transport Directive at the Commission. Hi Maria, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing quite well. Hope you too.
I am, thanks for asking. And we are also joined by Akosh, Chief Policy Advisor at UIRR. Hi Akosh, how are you?
Hi, Rémi. Hello, Maria. Good to be here again.
Well, it's nice to have you guys here because we will answer the questions we've been asking about the study that the Commission just published on the modal shift opportunities in Europe. So, Maria, in your view, can you tell us what was the Commission's objective with this study?
Yes, so the member states have now a obligation coming from the 10T regulation that they have to carry out an evaluation of the transshipment capacity in the multimodal terminals on their territory. And we believe that it is useful to have some common ground for the studies that the member states will themselves have to obviously do for their own particular situation. So for this study, we first of all wanted to think through what is the best approach or the kind of think through the logic of the study and propose a methodology or a kind of thinking model for the member states. But we also wanted to have a general view of the terminal situation in the Europe because we don't actually have a very good overview of the terminals and more importantly, where there are no terminals. But very importantly, this study actually mostly focuses on the road flows because the logic of the whole study is that where we already have terminals and where we already have multimodal transport, that's already multimodal. What you need to look at is where you have a lot of road transport operations still, which run in parallel to existing multimodal options. And that is where you can actually have most easily the modal shift. So therefore, this study mostly focused on the road flows between the same origin-destination pairs, and then try to see where those flows are big enough to possibly then actually justify investment into terminals, either new ones or extending the current ones.
So that's a very, very complex objective, Maria. And I think having read the study, indeed, a very innovative specification. And so we can only say that it's a unique and it's an interesting guidance. And what I would like to add here is that UIRR published a position paper, an implementation paper, which in a way complements the Commission's study, pointing to some considerations that the sector has towards this member state obligation. So I hope, Rémi, you can put this paper and the links to this study as well as the UIRR paper.
Yes, of course, we will publish the study in attachment to the podcast. Now, Maria, do you feel that the study achieved its objectives?
I think we got a lot of useful information, but I think it's also very important to say that this study alone is not sufficiently detailed to actually be a basis for new investment decisions. There's clearly need that member states will do additional work for their each particular situations. But we did have an overview of how many NUTS3 regions actually have no terminals and also are not in a catchment area of any of the terminals. And we also got an idea where exactly there are big road flows. And well, unfortunately, there are quite many NUTS3 areas where the road flows are actually very big. So I think that gives us, at the European level, a relatively good idea of where the most urgent areas and places are. And I also hope that the data, because the study is supplemented by Excel sheets which come with the exact data per member state, the NUTS3 region, that this is useful for the member states to carry out their own studies.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I must commend that you also published the annexes, or this big annex Excel table, which contains all the details, Maria, right? Can you say something more about what the annexes contained?
Indeed. So we have annexes or this Excel file, which is available on DigiMove's homepage. And there one can see information on what we call the terminal classes of the NUTS3 areas, which essentially means whether in the particular NUTS3 area there is a terminal or it is in a catchment area, or whether it is not. And we have still a number of regions which actually are not in the catchment area of any of the terminals. We have 253 such NUTS3 areas. Then we have an annex or a table for shared terminals, and that I think is also very important for this particular study. There is a number of areas or terminals which are actually used cross-border, meaning that either the terminal is in one country and it's used in a neighboring member state, which is close by. And we believe that it's very important that we drew the member states' attention to that, because we've seen historically some situations where member states only look in their evaluation on their territory and kind of forget that there is actually just across the border a terminal, and it doesn't always make economic sense to have terminals on both sides. Then we have the most important annex, which is the road flows. And the road flows in 2023, but also projections for 2030, 2035, and 2040 per NUTS region. So the member state can actually see where are the big flows between the origin-destination pairs, which are the same as existing road flows, and the existing multimodal connections, which would be the main input for the member states to really look at where they need to start with their own more detailed analysis.
Yes, that sounds very interesting, and we will of course put the link to the annex Excel file into the attachment of the podcast as well. But Maria, just a follow-up from my side. The study sounds very, very thorough, very complex, but on the other hand, I understand the resources used were quite limited. So this is where really the member states also have to do their tasks separately. This is not replacing what the member states have to do. Is that correct?
This is absolutely correct. And most importantly, as I said, the study focused mostly on the road flows. It did actually not assess the existing terminal capacity in the existing terminals. I think that it's very important that the member states will look at their own existing terminals, what their status is, and more importantly, whether the existing terminals have excess capacity, which could maybe absorb in the future some of those road flows that are in the regions. Because you don't always have to build new terminals. So they really have to look whether there's excess capacity, whether existing terminals can be extended, or whether there's really a need to build a new terminal. And also, I think it's important that in some regions, because the situations in member states are different, member states will have to look whether the definitions or how we define the catchment area is actually suitable. There may be some areas where, for example, the population density is so low that what we used for the whole EU is not necessarily really making economic sense. So the member states certainly have to do their own analysis, and there may be other questions they may want to look at, for example, the specific types of goods or particular loading units or other special needs, either dangerous goods or refrigeration or other issues. So that is the more detailed work that only member states can do, because that is actually the terminals on their own territory, and which they may probably need to contact and discuss in more detail.
Indeed. So since the study is supposed to be the basis of complementary studies made by member states, have you already presented the study you made to them?
Indeed, we presented the study to the member states last week, and we've had a few follow-up questions from different member states, but I think at the moment the member states are still reading into it because there's a lot of data in there. So we expect to have more questions and possibly bilateral meetings with the member states as a follow-up of that last Friday's presentation to them.
And Maria, do you think that the member states are now working on their studies, or have they started the work? Have you learned anything about that from this meeting?
We knew already that some member states were working or preparing to work on their own studies already before we finalized our study, and were actually eagerly waiting for us to finalize so they could compare the methodology. There are other member states who have contacted us after the meeting and told that they are looking into, or they're in the final stages of finalizing their own terms of references for their studies. So I think that there are certainly a number of member states who are working, but we don't have any information on all the member states whether they have already started. But we need, of course, to remind them that they have a deadline coming next July, which is actually quite soon if you look how long it takes to carry out the study. Next July, I mean 2027, not this July.
So there will need to be studies made by the member states. But after that, what will happen with the study? Do you think there will be any follow-up work? And if so, who needs to do what? And we also have another question that is, how should the European intermodal freight transport community use these results in your point of view?
There is no exact follow-up from our side. This is really an input study for the member states. We are, of course, listening to all the questions and issues that member states raise, and take note if any EU-level further work is necessary, maybe at a later stage. We also hope that once we get the information from the member states' studies, so the outcome of their evaluations, we may need to or may want to update some of the information, or at least look at the terminal levels. We'll have to see. We have not really thought of that, what we do once that. I think we have to wait until 2027. As for the industry, I think it's very important that the industry is in close contact with the member states. The 10T regulation actually tells the member states that they have to consult with the industry when they do carry out their evaluation. So I think an active part is necessary, because the member states also have to understand, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the special goods or the particular types of loading units, or maybe transshipment technologies. That's the kind of information that the member states need to, of course, get from the industry. So I would urge everybody to be actively involved and not necessarily wait until the member states come and ask.
So thank you for this advice, Maria. We will, as UIRR and the Industry Association closest to multimodal, intermodal freight terminals, we will, of course, convey these messages to our members, and we're using this very podcast to do that. And potentially we will also send letters to every Ministry of Transport, also pointing to our position paper on the topic. So thank you, Maria. Very good work, and we're excited to see the continuation of this capacity experiment or capacity measurement, and then the following action plan, which we shouldn't forget as well.
Absolutely. We're also looking forward to have finally a very good overview of what the terminal situation in the EU is.
Thank you, Maria, and have a good continuation together working with the Commission and UIRR in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so it was Akos and Maria on the Commission study regarding the modal shift opportunities in Europe. We can only recommend you to have a look at it, and you will find out that there is a lot of potential for long-distance truck to be shifted on trains where they belong. Make sure that you don't miss the follow-up studies made by the member states, because they will address the detailed capabilities of terminals and where investment is needed. You will also find the link in the description of the podcast. And that's all on my side. And on that, I wish you an intermodal goodbye.